At first, he tried. He gave effort, energy, vulnerability, and he waited for love to meet him halfway. But love didn't meet him. It demanded more, while giving less. So he went quiet, not because he's weak, but because he's tired. Tired of fighting for something that doesn't fight for him. Tired of being told he's the problem, even when he's the one holding everything together. Tired of being strong when no one notices. They say men don't open up. Truth is when they did, the world laughed. Mocked his pain, dismissed his silence, turned his struggle into a punchline. So now he doesn't speak, he observes. He watches love become a game of leverage, not connection. He sees commitment mocked, loyalty undervalued, effort ignored. He learned the math, love became loss. And still, he remembers the boy he used to be, the one who dreamed of a partner, not a critic, a team, not a scoreboard. But that boy grew up, and the man saw the truth. Relationships today aren't broken, they're redesigned. Redesigned for drama over peace. Redesigned for status, not substance. Redesigned to drain men until they disappear. And disappear they did, not into isolation, into self-focus, into purpose, solitude, discipline, into a life that doesn't need to beg for validation. They say men are giving up on love. But maybe, men are just choosing themselves. He's not cold. He's just clear. Clear that love shouldn't hurt more than it heals. Clear that peace is worth more than attention. Clear that silence is sometimes louder than words. So if you wonder why the modern man is quiet, it's not because he has nothing to say. It's because no one ever truly listened when he did. But now he listens to himself, and that is the first step to power. At first, he believed love was an exchange, time for time, effort for effort, emotion for emotion. But he quickly learned the equation was rigged. He gave his loyalty, she called it control. He opened up, she said he was too emotional. He stayed consistent, she said it was boring. No matter what he gave, it wasn't enough. And every time he was told to do more, he did. Not because he was weak, but because he wanted to build something real. Until one day he looked around and realized he was building it alone. He brought stability, she craved chaos. He brought truth, she wanted convenience. He brought love, she brought a test. Modern love became performance. Affection became a reward system for obeying emotional conditions. He wasn't loved for who he was, but for what he could do in the moment. And so he paid with presence, only to be charged with absence. He gave security, only to be accused of suffocating. He gave everything he could, but the love he received was conditional, inconsistent, and temporary. Love didn't feel like home. It felt like a loan, one with high interest, and no guarantee of return. They say men are emotionally unavailable, but what they don't say is how often they were emotionally unrewarded. He gave affection, got silence. He gave time, got distraction. He gave honesty, got distance. So he stopped withdrawing from an account that always bled. The account called love, overdrawn, overused, underappreciated. You can only be emotionally generous for so long before you realize the emotional economy is broken. He realized he was investing in something that gave him no dividends, and worse, blamed him when the system failed. Because in today's culture, if he walks away, he's a coward. If he stays, he's a fool. So what does he do? He stops playing the game. He learned that love in its current form wasn't love, it was performance. And men weren't partners, they were performers. Performed to be heard, performed to be desired, performed to be enough. But even when he performed perfectly, he was replaceable. One argument away from being forgotten, one dry season away from being labeled emotionally unavailable, and that label became his sentence. So he did what any tired soul does. He shut down, quietly, not in anger, not in bitterness, just in exhaustion. He stopped showing up for battles he didn't start. He stopped fighting for intimacy he had to beg for. He stopped bleeding for love that kept changing its rules. This wasn't quitting. This was clarity. Clarity that effort means nothing if it's not received. Clarity that you can give your all and still be treated like a draft. Clarity that in today's romantic landscape his heart was currency and he was bankrupt. So now he saves it, saves his affection, his loyalty, his emotional energy, not out of spite, but out of survival. Because love should not feel like war. It should not demand you bleed to prove you're worthy. It should not reward you with silence after giving your truth. But this is what he got. Over and over, and at some point even the strongest spirit stops donating to a void. He didn't stop loving, he stopped chasing ghosts. He didn't stop caring, he stopped collapsing for crumbs. He didn't give up on connection, he gave up on conditional survival. So now, he's not numb, he's not bitter, he's just empty of illusions. And that emptiness, it's not weakness. It's space for something real if it ever comes. Until then, he chooses peace over pressure. He chooses solitude over performance. He chooses to stop bankrupting himself for a system that never gave him credit. When he stopped giving to the emotional void, he didn't just walk away from love. He walked away from the power imbalance behind it. Because love, in its pure form, is supposed to be a bond. But in its modern form, it became a business deal. A contract built on conditions, signed with silence. He saw the shift from partnership to power, from mutual effort to strategic advantage. Affection became a leverage tool, vulnerability became a liability, time spent together became a negotiation, not a desire, and slowly, love stopped feeling like connection, it started feeling like risk management. He realized modern dating wasn't about building, it was about winning, and every win for him felt like a loss to her, because when love becomes a scoreboard, no one really wins. He wasn't trying to dominate, he was trying to relate, but that effort made him seem weak. In a world where whoever cares less holds more power, so now caring became dangerous. Texting first, too eager, planning the date, too invested, asking where things are going, too emotional. The man who leads with love is labeled desperate. The man who withdraws is suddenly mysterious and desirable. He didn't make these rules, but he's the one punished for breaking them. Because in today's structure, vulnerability is only attractive when she decides it is. Effort is only romantic when she's ready to receive it. And love is only real when she's not bored of it yet. He wasn't trying to be the boss, he was trying to be present, but presence became a gamble. The more he gave, the less he got. And over time, he learned the modern dating formula. Whoever needs less controls more. So love turned into a chessboard. Every word a calculation. Every move a tactic. Every silence a strategy. He didn't want to play games, but refusing to play. That was the first way to lose. So now he watches. He watches men suppress themselves just to seem unbothered. He watches women reward detachment and punish honesty. He watches emotions become weapons in a war no one signed up for. And in that war, connection became collateral damage. He asked himself, is this what love has become? A battlefield of egos, a dance of avoidance, a power play with no peace. He was raised to believe love was about effort, but now effort is weakness. He was told to lead, but leadership is now seen as control. He was told to protect, but protection is now labeled possessiveness. So he retreated, not because he feared women, but because he feared becoming disrespected by his own devotion. In the name of empowerment, balance was lost. Now relationships are power struggles disguised as passion, and men are expected to give up everything while asking for nothing. He saw that his value in love was negotiable, not based on who he was but what status he held, what image he projected, what vibe he carried. He realized love had shifted from being sacred to being strategic, so he pulled back, not to hurt anyone, but to protect the parts of him that only grow in safe soil. He's not cold, he's just tired of power plays dressed as passion. He's not distant, he's just tired of being punished for being present. He doesn't hate women. He just hates what love has turned into, because he knows love can still be real, but not when it's built on fear of looking too invested, not when intimacy is treated like a weapon, not when one side controls the dial of affection, while the other has to stay silent to stay respected. He's not asking for control, he's asking for balance, for effort that feels shared, for emotions that feel welcomed, not judged. But until then, he'll keep his distance, not out of resentment, but out of preservation, because when love becomes a battlefield, peace becomes a rebellion. He wasn't afraid to feel. He was afraid of what those feelings turned him into in the eyes of others, because in this world, a man who cries is a meme, a man who vents is too much, a man who breaks is weak, and still. They tell him open up, but the moment he does, he's punished for it. He's told to communicate, but not too emotionally. He's told to express himself, but not too honestly. He's told to talk, but not too long, or he's whining, so he says less. Then they ask why he's so distant. He speaks, they roll their eyes. He stays silent, they say he's emotionally unavailable. He shows stress, they call him unstable. He holds it in, they say he has no emotional depth. He's told to be soft, but punished for being seen. He's told to be strong, but criticized for not sharing. He lives in a world that demands his vulnerability, then laughs when he gives it, because masculine pain is entertainment now. A crying woman gets compassion. A crying man becomes a soundbite. He's not cold, he's cautious, because every time he opened the door to his heart, someone came in and ridiculed the furniture, so he shut it. Quietly, without slamming, without a scene, just locked it, and threw away the key. He stopped sharing, not because he didn't trust love, but because he didn't trust what love had become in a culture that mocks men who feel. He watches how society calls for men to be open, then shames them when they actually are. Watches shows, feeds, timelines where a man's breakdown is viral, not sacred, where tears from his eyes are repackaged into content for entertainment. He learned quickly, vulnerability isn't safe, it's bait. Bait for judgment. Bait for emasculation. Bait for loss of respect. So he adapted, not because he wanted to be closed off, but because the world refused to be a safe place for his soul. Now when he hurts, he hides. Now when he doubts, he disappears. Now when he struggles, he stays silent. Not because he wants to, but because history taught him what happens when he doesn't. He remembers the time he broke down and was told to man up. He remembers being vulnerable and watching her use it against him in the next argument. He remembers showing softness and losing her attraction overnight. These moments rewired him, not into a colder man, but into a quieter one. He saw that society allows men to be open but not respected once they are. That's the real heartbreak. They call it toxic masculinity when he shuts down, but never question the culture that made him afraid to be seen in the first place. So now he speaks with his actions, not his emotions. He shares through silence, not sentences. He copes through work, not words. And when they say men should talk more, he remembers the last time he did and how fast that door slammed in his face. He doesn't need a spotlight for his pain. He needs a place where it won't be mocked, flipped, or forgotten. He needs safety, not slogans, empathy, not echo chambers, understanding, not TikToks made at his expense. He's not broken, he's conditioned by a world that tells men to be vulnerable and then treats them like jokes when they are. So now, he doesn't ask to be heard, he listens to himself, because that's the only voice left that hasn't turned on him. He stopped trying to be emotionally accessible and started trying to be emotionally safe for himself, because in a world that constantly weaponizes male vulnerability, protecting your peace isn't weakness, it's survival. He learned silence the hard way, not because he had nothing to say, but because nothing he said was ever taken seriously. So he stopped trying to be understood. He stopped trying to explain the pain behind his quiet. He stopped performing emotional CPR in relationships that kept flatlining. He left the stage, walked out of the spotlight of judgment, and chose a different form of protest withdrawal. This is the rebellion no one talks about. The rebellion where the man doesn't rage, he retreats. The rebellion where he doesn't fight back. He fades back, not because he's defeated, but because he's done wasting energy proving he deserves peace. He doesn't raise his voice anymore, he raises his standards. He doesn't argue for love, he audits it. He doesn't chase, he observes. The modern man has realized loyalty with no respect is slavery, Effort with no return is self-sabotage. Vulnerability with no safety is suicide. So he rebels quietly. No posts, no speeches, no drama. Just distance, just focus. Just boundaries. He starts to pour his energy into himself, into rebuilding the parts of him that were once used for someone else's comfort, into goals, into discipline, into peace. They say he's emotionally unavailable, but they're late. He was emotionally drained. Long before he went silent, he stopped showing up in conversations that only existed to blame him. He stopped giving answers to people who weren't really listening. He stopped apologizing for not being who the world wants him to be, broken, but entertaining. Because his rebellion isn't against love, it's against being used by it. It's against being celebrated only when he suffers quietly. So now, he doesn't argue when they say he changed. Yes, he did. He stopped being available to systems that broke him, then blamed him for bleeding. He goes to the gym not for looks, but for control. He works late not for approval, but for independence. He spends time alone not because he hates women, but because he's learning to like himself again. This is what they don't see. That men aren't giving up on love because they're cold. They're giving up because they're tired of being warm in rooms that keep freezing them out. He realized peace feels better than being chosen, because being chosen means nothing. If it costs your dignity, he learned that begging to be understood is a form of emotional poverty, that chasing love without being loved back is slow suicide. So he detached. Detached not from people but from needing their validation. Detached not from love but from the illusion of it. Detached not from connection but from chaos disguised as intimacy. They call it loneliness, but to him, it's freedom. Freedom from having to perform, freedom from emotional landmines, freedom from asking for the bare minimum and still being denied. Now he smiles less, but feels more. Now he talks less, but understands more. Now he trusts less, but values deeper. They don't hear him anymore because he stopped raising his voice. Now he speaks through action, through absence, through silence, the kind that echoes louder than any argument ever could. He's not bitter. He's just done being broken in public so others can feel empowered. He's not angry. He's just exhausted from building bridges that always collapse under blame. He's not disappearing, he's returning to himself, to the version of him that existed before love became war. He's not giving up. He's taking back his time, his energy, his identity, because sometimes the strongest act of resistance isn't yelling, it's walking away and never looking back.